Hey, good afternoon, everybody. We're just going to give it about one more minute while we let everybody log on for today's Impact call. Good afternoon, everybody. Welcome to the second Impact call for GuideStar for 2018. Before we get started on our details for the day, just want to start with the housekeeping notes. Two questions we get all the time. The first is, will this webinar be recorded and will it be sent to you? And the answer is yes and yes. We're recording it and it will be sent to you. Also, we want to make this call as interactive as possible, so please ask questions throughout on anything that you're seeing that either myself or my colleague Miz is going to talk about today. And you can do that through the questions pane on the GoToWebinar interface. So at any time, just feel free to ask us questions away. With that, let me introduce myself and my colleague Miz, who's going to speak with me today. My name is Gabe Cohen. I'm the Senior Director of Marketing and Communications, and Miz is joining me as well. She's our Vice President of Strategy and Finance. And before we get into all the details, I just wanted to welcome two new GuideStar family members. One of the reasons why Jacob isn't here on the call today is because Jacob, our CEO, welcomed his second son this week, and our head of design, Sarah Madden, welcomed her second child, a daughter, on Friday. So we are very happy to welcome both of them. With that, let me go into today's agenda. I'm going to start by just talking a little bit about GuideStar, who we are, and what an impact call is. I'm then going to talk a little bit about what's new and what's coming soon for us as an organization. I'm going to hand it over to Miz then at that point to talk a little bit about our recent results. We have a lessons learned, and then we get to those questions. But again, feel free to ask questions at any time throughout the presentation today. So let me tell you a little bit about GuideStar first. And so GuideStar is a nonprofit organization, and what we want to do is try to get better information out there into the world so people can make better decisions about their charitable giving, and hopefully we get to a place where we're really making a difference in the world. And so that's what we do. We think of ourselves as a hub of nonprofit data that sits between a sector of users and nonprofit organizations that are trying to do the most good. And we've created this chart to try to explain that a bit. Going from left to right, you have all of our data sources, our inputs. In the center, you'll see us there as the hub. And then we have kind of multiple different channels that we use to get that information out to our end users. And I want to talk just a little bit about those channels. So the top one in the green circle there is our website. And so that's people just coming to GuideStar.org and researching different organizations, whether they're trying to find a new organization potentially to donate to or look up some more information about an organization that they give to. And so that's those users, again, that are just coming straight to our website. But we also have another way that we get our information out there, and that's through a network of about 215 different channels or platforms, if you will, that use our data and then make it available via their charitable giving platforms or employee giving portals to their end users that are a lot of times donors then that are making decisions based on that information, just the same as they would if they had come to GuideStar. So with that, I want to talk a little bit about scale. So starting from the left in terms of inputs, we have information on about 2.7 million organizations, and that includes both active and kind of historical organizations. And then in terms of the number of people that are using that information to make decisions, we had about 9 million users last year just on GuideStar.org. But through our partner network, we know for sure that there's another kind of 10 to 20 million that are using that information, and we think that there's probably a lot more too. We just can't track that yet, which is something that we're working on. because we'd like to know just how far and wide that information is being used. So let's talk a little bit about what an impact call is. And the best way to think about it, and it's really how we came up with the idea, is just based on for-profit companies' quarterly earnings calls, right? So this is our time to report on our results, what's going on in our organization, what's happened over the last quarter, what we see coming in this next quarter. And then we also want that interactive nature that I've been talking about as well. So that's what impact calls are. And with that, let me dive into the meat, which is kind of what's new, what's happened over the last quarter, and what's coming soon. So 3 different updates today. And the first is on our GuideStar nonprofit profiles and our participation in that program. The second is in organizations that have earned a platinum seal of transparency. And then lastly, I just want to touch on some improvements to our flagship web-based product, which is GuideStar Pro. So with that, we had 2 huge milestones that we hit in Q1 for our nonprofit profile program. And the first is we now have over 50,000 organizations that have earned a seal of transparency. Again, GuideStar is an objective organization. We don't award star ratings or anything like that. But what we do is if an organization has added a certain amount of information to their profile, so that information is then publicly available to our users, then we award seals of transparency based on the amount of information that they're adding. And with that, we crossed over 150,000 organizations that have updated their profile in all time. So we're really happy about both of those numbers. And a good way to start to think about kind of, how many of the overall nonprofit sector is that we're talking about? Well, one of the ways to think about that is that there's only about 180,000 501c3s that have 1 or more full-time staff. So, depending on how you slice it, we're starting to get to a relatively big percentage of organizations that are updating their information on GuideStar, making that better information available for people to make better decisions. The next big milestone that I want to talk about is that this actually happened in Q2, so we're cheating a little bit. But just in the last few weeks here, we've crossed so that we have 5,000 organizations that have earned a platinum seal of transparency. And that's our highest recognition. And what that means is that organizations are and they've added information on the results and progress that they're making as an organization. What are the numbers behind how they're making a difference? And so we're really happy about that. This program launched about 2 years ago now. And so we're happy with that progress. We obviously want to see more, but we're thrilled we have organizations from all 50 states. We are also really happy. When an organization updates this information on their profile, there's 2 different things that they can add. One are these common metrics that we've collected so that we can start to make kind of apples to apples comparisons as a sector about how much difference organizations are making. And then the other way is that they can use custom metrics. And we're thrilled to say that about 72% of organizations are using those common metrics, which really are going to allow us to talk in a much more sophisticated way as a sector about the difference that we're making overall and then individually as organizations. We're also thrilled that a pretty high number of those organizations have shared multiple years of data so that you can start to see growth. About 1,500 organizations have done that. Lastly, this chart that you see here, we're starting to look at the types of information that organizations are sharing. And organizations can share anything from inputs to outcomes when they report on the difference that they're making right now through our Platinum program. And you can see here the overwhelming majority are sharing outputs, which is good. But then we're seeing a good group, about a quarter of the metrics are actually outcomes, which is fantastic. And we all know that outcomes are a little bit harder to get. They're harder to track. They can be more expensive to get. So we like to see that, and we hope that part of that slice of the pie, if you will, continues to grow. So next up, I want to talk a bit about those additional features that have been added to GuideStar Pro, and this is recent in the last couple of months or so. 2 new sets of financial analysis that we've added to GuideStar Pro, which is our subscription product that our users can use to access in-depth information on nonprofit organizations. Both of these features were developed in partnership with Nonprofit Finance Fund, who's been our partner for a long time. The first one is peer analysis. So with this tool, users can go in and select different organizations, up to 5 different organizations that they want to compare the financial health of a particular organization to. And so you're going to get metrics, you're going to get analysis along the lines of profitability and revenue and expense composition and liquidity across those different organizations. The next feature, which we launched about a month ago, is financial trends analysis. Very similar to the peer analysis, only it's kind of doing an in-depth analysis of a single organization's finances. And it goes back over 4 different years, I believe. And the good news is that this feature is getting even better over the next couple months and quarters. We're going to be adding even more metrics to this, and then we've got a new PDF version of this coming within the next few quarters as well. So very excited to continue to add new functionality to our flagship product, which is GuideStar Pro. Also exciting that this functionality is added at no additional cost to the end user. This is just part of that package. So with that, we're going to talk a little bit about our recent results, and I'm going to turn it over to Ms.
Great. Thanks so much, Gabe. When we think about our results and our work at GuideStar, we always frame it in the theory of change. And I'm sure, and hopefully most of you nonprofits also think about your theory of change. Every year as part of our annual goal setting process, we also think about, does the work and activities and outcomes reflected in our theory of change reflect the focus that we're going to be embarking on in that future year. And I'll just share that we tweaked it a little bit this year. We're still making refinements and continuing to make sure that this is fully reflective of our focus for 2018 and ongoing. And so there's some very slight tweaks. You might not even notice it, but I'll walk you through the theory of change left to right. The top blue in terms of data, tools, and reach, those are the activities that we're focused on. And, as an infrastructure organization, one of many in the field, we think about the work that we do and the activities that we're focused on in concert with those many other nonprofits that are also doing good work in infrastructure, data, and philanthropic support. The kind of culmination of those activities, then we hope lead to the user outcomes in the middle column, and eventually lead to the field outcomes in the far right column. And those are kind of better increased quantity and quality of giving by donors, as well as greater efficiency and effectiveness of nonprofit organizations. And in the next few slides, I'll walk through, and if you refer back to that pie chart that Gabe had showed, we're still in that focused on the outputs, so the activities and the metrics that I'm going to share with you, for the most part, fall in that category. We're still working on getting our own outcomes, being an infrastructure organization, kind of one of many, and looking at the impact and the outcome that we help to move. Next slide, please. So firstly, on data, the chart on the left talks about how much data we have. Gabe had shared with us kind of the number of organizations that are in the current database. These are the number of data points, which continue to grow over time. On the right is a summary of all the different seals of transparency. Gabe had focused on the platinum level. So right now, at the end of Q1, we're over $50,000, and little after the end of Q1, we hit that 5,000 mark on platinum, where nonprofits are sharing quantitative programmatics in their profiles. And so we're happy with this growth. We saw a huge upturn in terms of participation with the nonprofit Winter Games, and so we're excited that interest and growth is continuing. Next slide, please. Next, if we think about the tools and resources that we're providing, the first metric that you see there is a new one for 2018. This is one that we've struggled with in the past. How we're thinking about that is what is the number and percentage of users who are paying users or customers that are using us on a month-to-month basis, and we're defining this as our core users. And so it's a new metric, so we're starting with that base and hoping to grow that over the course of this year. So stay tuned on that progress as customers are more inclined to look at those new analyses that Gabe had mentioned, peer analysis and financial trends analysis. We're hoping that those improvements and added features will attract people to GuideStar. On the right, you see the number of searches and profile views. This is also continuing to grow. Number of profile views is also a new metric that our team is focused on this year. We're happy that that is growing, quite significantly, over 60% year on year. That big jump from Q3 to Q4 is, as always, a result of giving season. And so we're hoping that the features and improvements that we're making will also continue to increase these numbers. Next slide, please. Finally, on reach. So thinking back to the data hub slide in the early part of Gabe's presentation, on the left is users to GuideStar.org. So those are the numbers of registered users in orange and number of total users for the quarter. So it would add up to that 9 million over the course of the year that we had talked about. So these are users that are coming to GuideStar.org directly. On the right is the number of websites and organizations, as we think about it, our data distribution network, so those platforms and other channels through which GuideStar data is seen, not on GuideStar itself, but through our 200 over partners at the end of Q1. Next slide, please. I'm going to be wrapping up our results section here soon, and shifting from programmatic results to financial results. We had a great Q1. Our revenue performance is really strong. Our sales team and our e-commerce team really made great improvements compared to last quarter and last year, so we're continuing that growth. Our expenses essentially came in, and I'm reading this chart left to right, our expenses came in essentially on budget. And so in the last two columns, what you see there are positive results, better than expected, over $200,000 better on an unrestricted net assets basis. And then, we essentially broke even when we had expected to make a slight loss on a total net assets basis. So we're very happy with these results, and we hope that the momentum continues throughout 2018, which we think it will. So next slide. Finally, in terms of our balance sheet, this is also continuing to grow and holding very steady at 5.5 million total assets. Our cash position was slightly lower at 2.2 million, and this is a result of higher accounts receivable, and the mix of products that we're selling is different than what we had budgeted for. So those are our programmatic results and financial results. And with that, I'm going to hand it back to Gabe.
Great. Thanks, Miz. So a quick lesson learned for this quarter, and it's something that we've talked about a bit in the past, but partnerships can take some time. And really, when you want a partnership to be successful on multiple different levels, you need to be very thoughtful about how they're executed and what overall goals are and what individual organization goals are. But really the resounding thing that we find ourselves thinking about is just how much partnerships are worth it at the end of the day. And we had 3 great partnerships that launched or were announced in Q1, and I just wanted to go through those kind of quickly here. And the first is that in partnership with Salesforce.org, we're helping them launch a new platform that's called Philanthropy Cloud, and it's going to be an employee giving portal that's launching in the next couple of months. And that portal is going to be built on our database and on our information. And we're really excited. The team over at Salesforce.org really wants to get this right, and they're trying to figure out what the right information is to share. And we're excited to be working with them step by step. The next is we launched a partnership with Sage Intacct, the accounting software. And what they're doing is that their nonprofit users can actually add some of the financial information that we were talking about earlier directly to their dashboards in the accounting software itself. So you're going to start to see that information there. And it's a great way to get better information to nonprofit users. So we're excited about that partnership. The last one is that we launched a multi-partner partnership with the National Association of State Charity Officials, the Multi-State Registration and Filing Portal, and an organization called CityBase. And with that partnership, we're really starting to try to come up with a new way to think about our database being used as a technical solution for state charity registration. And so we're excited about that. We're beginning work on that to hopefully to have a product launching later this year or early next year. We know it's a problem that a lot of larger organizations face, where you have to register in multiple different states and there's different forms. GuideStar ourselves do it, and the forms can take up the size of a full conference table when you're filling them out. So we're excited about all of those partnerships. With that, I'm going to move on to questions. And so we've had a couple of questions come in. If anybody else has any questions, feel free to just ask them right now in that questions pane. And so the first question we got, actually, the two first questions that we have are both about our nonprofit profile program. And the first one, someone asked how much it costs for nonprofits to update their profile on GuideStar. And the answer is that it's free. It's always free for nonprofits to come and update their profiles. And then that information that they're updating on their profile is always available for free to our end users on GuideStar.org as well. We really want to get that information out there. So that's how that part works. The next question is about uploading your own 990 onto GuideStar. And as it relates to, I know a lot of organizations in the last couple of days have sent their 990s in. We're 5.5 months out from the end of the calendar year. So if your fiscal year aligns with that, then you're probably wrapping up your 990 right now. It takes a few months for those 990s to show up on GuideStar.org. And mostly that's processing time by the IRS. But then once we get it, we do need to upload it to our system as well. And so that process can take a few months. So best practices is to actually come and just upload that directly to your profile as soon as you turn it into the IRS. And you can do that through the same way that you would update anything else on your profile. And yeah, very simple. And just takes a couple of minutes to upload that document, and then you can be done with it. And so I think that is all of the questions that we have today. Again, thank you everybody for joining us for this quarterly impact call. And we look forward to chatting with everybody 3 months from now. Thanks, everyone.